Hello, everyone. So, we are here today to talk about a very important and very interesting part of chemistry, that is organic chemistry. Now, before we start talking about organic chemistry, let me just take you to the history and let me take you to the basics of chemistry. Whenever we talk about chemistry till 10th, we talk about it as a subject, as just one straight single subject. But as we go ahead and we go into the little advanced version of chemistry, we understand that chemistry can be classified into three broader categories, and those are physical chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and organic chemistry. So basically, as I mentioned, so till 10th, we didn't know that the chemistry can be further classified and have further broader categories, or you can say branches, which we can study about in detail and we can understand in depth in those branches. As we go ahead in 11th and 12th, and then furthermore, chemistry gets classified into these three broader categories, which can further be divided into many subcategories. And we do not deal with chemistry as a one subject. Instead, we divide it into three parts, and these three parts have their own importance, have the reason behind it, that why they have been called so, and they have their own specific characteristics because of which they have been defined as physical chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and organic chemistry, and out of which we are going to learn in detail about organic chemistry. This part is the most interesting part of your chemistry. At least it seems to me. It has a lot of logical stuff and mechanism based stuff, which when you talk about in general in chemistry, you will find relatively lesser, because many of the things you have to mug up, you have to remember. But this chemistry specifically has a lot of logic behind it, and that's what makes it more interesting. Okay, so let me give you a small brief about what is physical chemistry, what is inorganic, and then we will talk in detail about organic chemistry. So what is physical chemistry? Physical chemistry is a part of chemistry, or you can say is a branch of chemistry, in which we deal with the quantitative analysis of the chemical reactions and equations. So in 10th, we have all learnt about chemical reactions and equations. We have learnt what all different type of reactions are there, what all energy transactions can happen in a chemical reaction, can be exothermic, can be endothermic, what all different categories it can be classified into, and what all different changes you can observe when a chemical reaction is taking place. So when you judge these reactions in the quantitative terms, basically heat, temperature, pressure, volume, mass, when you talk about these terminologies and calculations, this comes under the category of physical chemistry. So no matter your reaction is organic reaction or an inorganic reaction, any calculation based study or quantitative based study is considered in the physical chemistry. Okay, feasibility of a reaction, reversibility of reaction, all these things are the part of this. Next comes to the inorganic chemistry. Inorganic chemistry is the chemistry where we deal specifically with the metals, non-metals, or elements and their reactions, especially those salts and compounds which are extracted from the earth crust or from the non-living material. So reactions based on them, or mining of metals or extraction of metals, and then chemical reactions, chemical properties, physical properties of metals, non-metals, elements, and those all salts and compounds which have been extracted from the nature, can be acid, can be base, can be anything which has been extracted from the nature, from the non-living sources, and their reactions and their possible reactions are considered the part of inorganic chemistry. Okay, so basically dealing with the matter which is non-living, which can be extracted from the non-living things, and what all different reactions it can perform will be the part of inorganic chemistry. So this is, in brief, I have told you about these two sciences. Third, as I mentioned, the most important part of your chemistry is the organic chemistry and what it deals with. Inorganic deals with the material or the substances or the compounds obtained from the non-living sources, or the metals, non-metals, elements, metalloids, and so and their reactions. So basically, with the non-living matter, the substances majorly extracted from the non-living matter comes under the category of inorganic chemistry, and we deal with it. Whereas organic is about dealing with organic substances. Now, what is organic substance? Organic substances, if you talk about a very old definition of organic substances, these are the substances which are extracted from the living matter. Living matter can be anything, can be human beings, can be plants, can be animals, can be dead layer of plants and animals. Basically, when you say oil, petroleum and all that, all these are living matter. Basically, the substances which have been made up of the living matter, or which were living at certain point of time, or which are currently living at this point of time. So any compound which has been extracted or which is found in the living matter is called organic compound. And the study of those compounds, their reactions, their performance, their naming, their preparation, their properties, all that comes under the category of organic chemistry. The study of compounds, which basically is the study of those substances which have been extracted from the living matter or which are found in living matter, no matter we have extracted it or we have prepared it in the laboratory, but those substances are found in the living matter also. Such compounds study in detail is called as organic chemistry. So long back in year 1824, there was a scientist named as Friedrich Wöhler. I'll tell you what the scientist did, but as I mentioned earlier, long back, even before 1824, there was a understanding about organic compounds, and that understanding was that these compounds cannot be prepared but can only be extracted from the living matter. Basically, let's say I talk about oxalic acid. Oxalic acid can be extracted from some living being or from some living matter. Similarly, there is methane, which can be extracted or which can be obtained from living matter. So basically, we can just extract and we cannot prepare these substances. That was the understanding about the organic chemistry. But as I mentioned, in 1824, there was a scientist called as Friedrich Wöhler. Okay, he did an experiment and prepared oxalic acid in the laboratory, which is an organic compound and is found only in the living substances or living matter or living beings. And it was prepared from a compound called as cyanogen, which is completely an inorganic compound. Inorganic compound means this compound can be formed only through the inorganic processes, can be extracted from the inorganic material, or it has nothing to do with the organic substances, or it cannot be, it does not present, or it is not present in any of the living matter at all. How the cyanogen looks like? Cyanogen is CN single bond CN. This is your cyanogen. Okay, or I can also write it as C triple bond N single bond C triple bond N. This is your cyanogen, and your oxalic acid is COOH single bond COOH. So this was the first experiment which proved that an inorganic substance, an inorganic compound which is completely different in the properties as well as the origination of the compound, can be converted to the organic compound, which is the part of the living matter or which exists in some living matter. So we can synthesize an organic compound in the laboratory by doing some reactions on the inorganic compound. And then, to make sure that this is just not an exceptional reaction, but there can be multiple such reactions, he tried to create another compound, and that compound was, this was the first reaction where the cyanogen was converted into oxalic acid by certain set of reactions. Second was the preparation of urea. Urea is found in the urine of the living beings, and that is why we call it organic, because it is present in the urine. And originally, or you can say initially, we used to think that urea is found only in urine of the living beings. Okay, so this was prepared. What is the formula of urea? CONH2NH2. This is the formula of urea. Okay, and it was prepared from certain set of compounds as potassium cyanate. It was prepared from potassium cyanate. This is the formula of potassium cyanate. I'll just write the spelling also. Potassium cyanate. and ammonium sulfate. Ammonium sulfate, NH4 whole twice, SO4. Okay, and both of these compounds are completely inorganic compounds. So that means you can say these compounds do not exist in any living matter. And there were certain reactions performed on these two compounds, and we obtained urea, which is found in the organic substances. Organic substances at that time, there was only one source of urea, and that was urine. Okay, now it is found in multiple other different, it can be obtained from many different multiple living sources also, but at that time urea could be obtained only through the urine. So this is a completely living matter, organic matter. This is completely inorganic compound, non-living matter. And then this could be converted, that inorganic compound could be converted into urea by doing certain reactions on it. So we understood from these reactions, the first reaction which he had done in 1824, and this another reaction he did in 1828, and we understood that the conversion is possible. Inorganic compounds can be converted into organic compounds by doing certain reactions. That means we can synthesize the organic compounds, and then the study of this organic compounds became much broader and broader, because we tried multiple different reactions on these organic compounds, and we did multiple different reactions of inorganic compounds to produce the organic compounds, which could be of a wide use in the normal, you can say, day-to-day life. And that's how the production of organic compounds increased, and because the uses of organic compounds are widespread and there were limited sources of organic compounds, this discovery helped us in such a way that now we could prepare organic compounds, we could use them in wide range, as well as it became so easy to use, easy to extract, and to create multiple different organic compounds which could have multiple different uses. And that's why now organic chemistry is not just dealing with the compounds which can be extracted from the living matter, but also what all different compounds can be prepared from them. And that is why it has become a broader line which deals with the pharmaceuticals also, which deals with the polymerization, polymers also. And there are many other divisions like paint, petroleum. All these are branches of organic chemistry only, that we could do only and only when we understood that there are certain reactions which you can perform, and then you can synthesize new different type of compounds which will have their own importance, which will have their own reactions, which will have their own which will have their own properties, which may help us in general in humankind in multiple different areas, in multiple different developments, as in medicines, and in you can say in fuel, in many other areas. So it was a very, very important discovery. Okay, so this is maybe you must have felt it that it is way too much and we are going to deal with this in organic. No, exactly. This was just a history to tell you from where did it begin and now where have we reached. What we are going to understand in organic chemistry, I have just listed it down over here. So we will be taking baby steps to understand organic. As I mentioned, it is quite logical, and you cannot choose to only mug up organic, because there are thousands of reactions you will be dealing with, and it is practically not possible for anyone to remember all those reactions. But if you use your logic, if you know what is the course of the reaction, exactly same way, like if I ask you to mug up each and every question in maths, you cannot do it. If you understand one logic behind it and you apply it to multiple different questions, you will be able to solve thousands of questions. So exactly same way we deal with the organic chemistry. So what all we are going to cover, if you see the name of the topic which I have mentioned over here, I have mentioned some basic concepts of organic chemistry. Now this is the name given by me. It can be named in many ways in different board books, and you can say in different in 10th grade book or in 11th grade book or 11th ICSE book or CBSE book. This particular thing can be named in multiple different ways. But this is what is the structure, what we are going to understand about organic. First of all, we will be understanding what is organic chemistry, which partially I have told you about history. I have not told you about what exactly is organic chemistry and what we are going to do in it. So we'll be talking about this. Then we'll be talking about why carbon is the most important element and essential element for organic chemistry. Then we'll be talking about in which all basic categories we will be dividing, or in which all basic categories your organic chemistry is divided. This is the first step of first classification of organic chemistry. Then how to name the compounds, what are the rules behind it, what logics we have to use while naming them, all that we'll be learning. And there are some names which are going to be illogical, so basically we call them common names. It's same as how you have been called at your homes with some random name. So these are some random names, okay? And IUPAC names are the names which have been given to the compounds with respect to certain rules. So we'll be learning those rules. Then how to write an organic compound in different ways. So there are many ways a compound can be written, okay? There are many ways you can represent a compound. So we'll be learning about that. Then we'll be talking about how to write different organic compounds with same molecular formula. So basically we know a formula of an organic compound. Can there be different ways to write that organic compound? Not as in like it will not be the same compound maybe, or you can say there will be small changes which will come up in the compound. Let me just give you an example. Let's say if I have a formula as C5H12. I know that many of you won't be knowing what is this compound, but just let me explain you. If I have C5H12, I can write the compound as CH3, CH2, CH2, CH2 and CH3. Okay. So these are all hydrogens. My handwriting is bad, so you please choose to ignore. So these are the compound. This is one compound. This is one way I can write this compound. Other way is CH3, CH3, CH2, CH3. So this is another way of writing it. And mind it, the formula is still the same. When you talk about the name of this compound and this compound, the name would be different, and hence the properties would also be, because the bonding is different. The chemical bond which have been formed here, every carbon is linked to just two more carbons. This carbon is linked to one carbon, this carbon is linked to two carbons, this carbon is linked to further two carbons, and so on. Here the linkage changes. This carbon is linked to three carbons. So basically there is a difference in the bond formation over here, which change in the bond formation causes the change in the properties. Okay, so this compound will have a different name with respect to this and the properties also, even though if you look at this formula, the formula still remains the same. So how does it happen? Why does it happen? All we'll be talking about. So this is what we will deal with. So this is the first part of basic understanding of organic chemistry. No matter you are in grade 10th or you are in grade 11th or in whichever class you are, you may know it, you may not know it, but this is the basics to start with organic. If you are not clear with these things, this is the foundation of organic. If you don't know these, if you're not very clear about these things, then building up anything or any concept of organic over and above this will be a waste, and you will stuck at some point of time in life till the time you're doing organic chemistry. Okay, so we'll be laying the foundation first. You may know this, you may not know this, but still we'll be learning each and everything in detail. Okay, so let's begin with the first question. And we have already got a partial answer for the first question, that is, what is organic chemistry? It is a branch of chemistry which deals with organic molecules or organic compounds. I told you what are organic compounds: the compounds which are extracted from the living matter or which are found in the living matter. Okay, and you can also mention hydrocarbons and their derivatives. Organic compounds are also called as hydrocarbons and their derivatives. So what are hydrocarbons? We will understand that. So basically dealing with this science of organic compounds, their origination, their preparation, their chemical reaction, their physical properties, their chemical properties, their uses, and then forming different compounds using those organic compounds synthetically. All that comes under the category of organic chemistry. Now let's understand what all your organic compounds are, or how can you basically tell whether this so and so compound is an organic compound or not? So for an organic compound, or to be an organic compound, a compound must have carbon in it. So this is a very important condition for a compound to be categorized in the organic compound. Compound must have carbon in it. Or you can say all the substances, because we started learning about organic chemistry from the compounds which are already existing in the organic matter. And every single thing, no matter you believe it or not, every single thing which is organic or which is living or any living matter is made up of carbon. No matter you talk about me, you talk about yourself, you talk about plants, you talk about animals, you talk about microorganisms, you talk about amoeba, you talk about anything which is living matter is made up of carbon. So that is the nature's choice, that the nature has chosen carbon to be the main backbone of the compound or main element of the compound to be called as organic compound. When we have to synthesize organic compounds, this condition remains the same, that all our organic compounds must have the carbon in it, and it will always have carbon in it, and then only the compound will be called as organic compound. So this is the primary condition for a compound to be called as organic compound. Carbon is must. Okay, why carbon is must? Let's understand. There must be some definitely special characteristics your carbon should be able to or carbon must have, so that it has been chosen by nature to be the part of organic compound, or you can say it is an element which initiates the life. Okay, so what all different properties your carbon can exhibit? Let's talk about it. Which are the special characteristics your carbon exhibit? First of all, your carbon has a property called as tetravalency. We'll talk about all these properties one by one. Then comes your catenation. And then highly versatile. Now, let me talk about the tetravalency first. All of us know what is tetravalency. Valency, all of us understand. Valency is nothing else but the dealing with electrons, how many electrons you're going to deal with other element to form a bond. So basically you can share that many number of electrons, or you can give away those many number of electrons, or you can take those number of electrons. Any transaction what you do in terms of electrons is called the valency. So carbon has the valency of 4. So basically carbon has 4 electrons in the outermost shell, and what it can do with these 4 electrons, it can share these 4 electrons with other elements to form the different type of bonds. Second important thing, that carbon has a special characteristic that it can form a single bond with substances. For example, if I talk about, I have drawn a Lewis dot structure over here. This is my Lewis dot structure where I have represented carbon as, I have represented the valence electrons over here with the 4 dots. Now, let's say hydrogen approaches to the carbon and tries to form a bond. Hydrogen can share 1 electron with hydrogen. Let me just use a different color. Hydrogen gives away its electron or shares its electron with the carbon. So here will be 1 bond formation. Another hydrogen can come and share its electron and can form 1 bond over here. Another hydrogen can come and form a bond over here. And another hydrogen can come and form the bond over here. So here, carbon has made 4 single bonds with hydrogen, and the structure will look like this: hydrogen, 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 and hydrogen. So here, we understood that carbon can form single bond or 4 single bonds with specific species. I have taken hydrogen. You can take any other element wherever the reaction is feasible and possible, and carbon is capable of forming single bonds. Okay, let's see if it is capable of forming some other kind of bond or not. Double bond, triple bond. So let's say I have written it this way. Okay, now let's say 2 hydrogens come and approach your carbon and form the single bond over there. Okay, so here is the single bond formed by hydrogen, and then comes the another carbon, okay, which also has made its 2 bonds with the hydrogens, 2 single bonds with the hydrogens. Okay, so here what we can see is that both of these carbons have individually formed 2 single bonds and 2 electrons in each are still lying. So basically octet is not complete, so they can still form the bond. These two carbons will approach each other and will try to form the bond. How will they form? They'll again share the electrons. If the sharing will happen, let's see each carbon's octet is getting completed or not. 1 electron here and 1 here of hydrogen, so 2, 4, 6, 7, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I do the reaction this way and I share the electrons this way, that the carbon has shared 1 electron with 1 hydrogen, another electron with another hydrogen, and 2 electrons with other carbon, the octet will be complete. Bonding is quite possible. Similarly, look at the another carbon. It has done the exactly same thing. So 1 electron it has shared with 1 hydrogen, another electron it has shared with another hydrogen, and the 2 electrons it has shared with another carbon. Again, octet is complete for the second carbon also. So here, when you will try to form the structure of this molecule, it will be something like that: single bond with hydrogen, then double bond with carbon. So what did I learn from here, or what did we learn from here? That carbon is also capable of forming double bond at the same time when it is forming a single bond with something else. So it has a capability of forming single bonds, individually all single bonds. It can form double bond and single bond simultaneously. Let's look at another example. Now this carbon, let's say I have 2 carbons again, and these carbons choose to form 1 single bond with hydrogen. Okay, and then these 2 carbons try to form the bond with each other with the help of 3 electrons each. So basically, this carbon give away its 3 electrons or share its 3 electrons. Let's mark it carbon 1 and carbon 2. Carbon 1 share its 3 electrons with carbon 2, and carbon 2 share its 3 electrons with carbon 1. Sharing is happening. Sharing will happen. Let's see octet is getting completed or not. So here I have 1, 2 electrons for carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 electrons for carbon 1 are done. So basically octet for carbon 1 is complete. Exactly same way, 8 electrons for carbon 2 is also complete. So this is quite possible, and the bonding will still happen. So carbon will form a triple bond with carbon and single bond with hydrogen. So what we have understood from here, understood from this kind of bonding structure, that carbon is capable of forming all single bonds or double bond, combination of a double bond and single bond, combination of a triple bond and single bond. All these variety of combinations are possible in carbon, which is not possible in any other element. So it's not only about tetravalency, but capability of forming multiple bonds. Forming multiple bonds with itself or with other elements. As I have shown you the double bond or triple bond with the carbon itself, it can do the same thing with the other element also. I have an example like that. I have, let's say, I'll write it as CH3. Okay, let me write CH3, C triple bond N. So here, if you look at this carbon has made 3 bonds with nitrogen and 1 bond with the carbon. So it's not like the carbon is forming single bond, double bond or triple bond only with itself, but it can do the same thing with the other element also. This kind of special characteristic is only and only in carbon. No other element in the periodic table can show this kind of special characteristic. Tetravalency as well as capability of forming all type of combination of bonds. Okay, this is one thing. This is one important characteristic which is making it special with respect to all the other elements. Second property is catenation. Catenation is further extension of the similar property. What is catenation? Catenation is the capability of forming long chains. But in catenation, we talk about the chain of itself. Basically, carbon is going to link with itself in n numbers. It can link with itself in n numbers, and remaining, see here I have made the single bond with each carbon. So basically 3 valencies, 2 valencies per carbon are incomplete, and these will be fulfilled by hydrogen. Okay. So right now let's not talk about hydrogen. Let's assume that other valencies will not remain unoccupied, will get filled. But what I'm trying to tell you is the carbon can form longer and longer chains with itself. Okay, that chains can be the straight normal chains, long open chains. It can be a cyclic chain. Look at this. The carbon has made a single bond with this, carbon has made a single bond with this, so two other bonds would be there, which will get occupied by some or other element. So basically, closed chains are also possible. Such kind of open chains are also possible. And if I talk about chain with a single bond and double bond, that kind of combination is also possible. Now look here. This carbon has already made 3 bonds, so one bond will be occupied by some or other element. And this is the case in each carbon. So in any combination, your carbons can link and form the longer and longer chains. N number of carbons you can join, and that property helps you in making infinite number of organic compounds, because you can just keep adding carbons and then the new compound will form. So that kind of property is also exhibited only and only by carbon. Catenation is the property which is exhibited by other elements also. Sulfur can also exhibit that. Phosphorus can also exhibit that, but till a certain number. So basically, after 4 sulfurs or after 8 sulfurs, it will not get into the chain. After 4 phosphorus, it will not further make the higher chain. But that is not the case with carbon. Carbon can keep linking, can form the longer and longer chains. If I talk about soaps and fatty acids, fats and all that, these generally have 17, 18 carbons in one chain or 19 carbons in one chain. So such kind of combinations are also there, where 19, 20, 50, 40, or if you talk about the normal carbons, allotropes itself. What are allotropes of carbon? The different forms of carbon. So we have diamond, we have graphite, we have Buckminster fullerenes. And there itself, in Buckminster fullerenes, your carbon has the range of carbon 50 to carbon 60. So basically 50, 60 carbons are just like that, linking and forming another form of carbon that is called as Buckminster fullerenes. And similarly, you can have a number of carbons can attach with each other, can form different type of organic compounds. And that is the reason you can get millions and trillions different type of compounds just by changing the position of carbon, by changing the bonding structure, by adding the number of different carbons, and so on. So these kind of properties are exhibited by a single element in the whole periodic table, and that is carbon. And that is why we say it is an essential element for organic chemistry, because this is the only one which can have that versatile nature of showing different type of properties depending upon different type of compounds. And it can form different type of chains exhibiting different properties, showing up different characteristics, and still made up of one single element in all the cases, and that is carbon. So carbon is the main backbone of your organic compound. There are additional elements which will be there to satisfy the valency of carbon, or to make different structures, or to add up different properties in that organic compound, but the main backbone will be made by carbon only. So what is the another important element which will be the part of an organic compound? That is hydrogen. The another supporting element is hydrogen, which basically helps in, or which basically fulfills the valency of the carbon. So this is something which I was mentioning over here. Let's say I have made this chain where carbon, 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 carbon is linked with each other. Now first carbon has only one valency fulfilled, other 3 are free. So what I can do is, I can make the bond with hydrogen in each case, and valencies will get fulfilled. So hydrogen will basically balance out the valencies of the carbon. So carbons will first link with each other, will make the longer chains, and rest of the valencies will be fulfilled by hydrogen. That is how the structure of organic compound is. So that is the reason why organic compounds are also called as hydrocarbons, because main base of your organic compounds is carbon and hydrogen. Along with that, there can be other elements which can be there, like oxygen, fluorine, nitrogen, chlorine, and sulfur, phosphorus. So there can be other elements also, but they'll be in very less number or very less quantity. The major compound will be made up of carbon and hydrogen only. There is a possibility that there is no hydrogen and only carbon and other elements are there, then also it will be called as organic compound. But carbon is a mandate. Without carbon, there will be no organic compound. This you have to understand. So we have basically covered 2 things over here. We have covered what is organic chemistry, and then we have covered why carbon is an essential element, what all different properties of carbon make it special, which helps in forming the organic compounds. Now next we'll be talking about question third, that is in which basic categories of organic compounds are classified, and we'll be talking about how to name such compounds in the next video. So we'll be talking about naming of these compounds and classification in next video. First video was only about telling you what is organic and why carbon is essential. We'll be covering all these topics one by one. Once we are done with covering all these questions and answer, you will know the basics of organic very well, and then we can build up the other things on it, the mechanism, the performance, and how the reaction takes place, what all different logics are there behind each and every reaction, what carbon or organic compounds perform. So that we will learn only once we are thorough with all this. Okay, so here we are done with the first video where we have just done the understanding of these two questions. In the next videos, we'll be covering these topics, and this is your basic understanding of organic chemistry. This is not yet about how the reaction takes place. We are not going to start any reaction right now. This is just about the understanding of organic, understanding the basics of organic. We are done with the first two questions of the video, as I had mentioned. And now I have just listed down some important points and definitions, which will be, because I have not written anything on the board with respect to the definition and how to express the answer if somebody asks you what is organic chemistry or why carbon is important and all that. I had just explained you. So now it's exactly how you should be writing an answer when somebody asks you what is organic chemistry, why carbon is important, what is catenation, all these questions, how to answer them. We will just quickly see. So the first question we have, the first question is what is organic chemistry? I have already explained you. Just see the word by word definition of organic chemistry, that it is a scientific study of structure, properties, composition, reaction, synthesis of organic compounds. And we know what are organic compounds. These are the molecules which are made up of carbon and hydrogen mainly. It can have other elements also, that is oxygen, sulfur, chlorine, bromine, iodine, phosphorus. Can be many things over there, but a main composition will be carbon and hydrogen. So if somebody asks you what is organic chemistry, this is how you have to answer it. Next is why carbon is a building block of life, because for life what we require is living beings are made up of cells, and cells and other structures are made up of carbon. Okay, so basically how carbon, because all of these are made up of organic compounds, and organic compounds are made up of carbon mainly. So, and this is the reason why carbon is an essential element to the life on the earth. But now, why this carbon is the only one which can be the part of the organic compound? Why this is the backbone of the organic compound? This is because of the three reasons I have already mentioned this. That is, carbon is quite versatile in nature, and that is because its tetravalency, capability of forming multiple bonds. That is, at the same time, it can form single bond, double bond, and single bond, double bond, or triple bond, not and. So it can form these bonds in the combination of single bond with double bond, or single bond with triple bond, like that. Okay, or the carbon has made all the four bonds as a single bond. So that's how it can show the multiple different type of bonding structures. And third thing is catenation. Catenation means it can form the longer and longer and longer and longer and longer and different type of chains. This is the reason why we can have millions and trillions of compounds which are organic in nature, and that is why it is an important building block for the life. Next is explain the tetravalency of carbon. The same point which we had discussed, 3 points which we had discussed before, that is why carbon is important. It is just an elaboration of tetravalency. So what is tetravalency? Tetravalency is the valency of carbon, that is 4. That means it can share 4 electrons and can form the covalent bonds. So now carbon has a tendency to share electrons to form covalent bonds. 4 bonds it can form at the same time. Now when it is forming 4 bonds, the 4 bonds can be anything with a combination of single, double, or triple bond. That means carbon can form 4 single bonds, or it can form the bond in combination of single and double, or it can form the bond in the combination of single and triple. For example, let me just write it over here. So carbon has formed 4 single bonds with hydrogen over here, so it has formed CH4. Now here CH2, double bond CH2. In this, the carbon and carbon has formed double bond with itself. So basically, if I'll write it more neatly, it has to be CH2 double bond CH2. Basically, carbon has formed single bond with a hydrogen. Each carbon has formed 2 single bonds with a
a hydrogen and one double bond with the other carbon. So that's how the combination of single and double bond works. Similarly, I can have this kind of bonding structure also. Just see here. So this is carbon has formed a triple bond with another carbon, whereas a single bond with a hydrogen. So basically it can form the bond in the combination of single bond and triple bond also. Due to this special property, it can give you vast variety of organic compounds, and that is why it is very important element also for organic compounds. This is the tetravalency of carbon. Okay, and this is the importance of the tetravalency of carbon. Next is, what is catenation? Catenation, again, we have already discussed. I'm just explaining you the definition over here, so that when you see the definition in the books or in the notes, or when you write down these definitions on your own, you should know exactly what terminologies you have to use. So catenation is the self-linking property. So it's not about carbon being linked with the oxygen or nitrogen or hydrogen or something else. Here we are talking about the self-linking property. That means carbon should make bond with itself. But basically, how many carbons can attach with themselves, with each other, to form the longer chains and rings. Carbon is a very light element. So basically, this is a very important point, that why carbon can show this kind of catenation, because it has a very small size, and due to its small size and light, when being lightweight, and it has a tetravalent nature also, this can show this property, that this can form longer and longer and longer and longer and longer chains. And these chains also can behave in a different manner. That means it can have long straight chains, or it can have the closed chains. Closed chains, as in, like, the carbon has made a bond in such a way that the chain has become cycle chain, or it can have the branches. That means this is the carbon chain, and then you're attaching carbon like this, the way how you can say tree branches are. So as I mentioned, that we can form a different type of chains with due to the catenation. That is, you can have straight chains, you can have branch chains, you can have cyclic chains. Straight chains means carbon is linking with each other to form this kind of chain. Now when we see here, again I'm explaining the same thing, that the carbon has a tetravalency. So there are 4 bonds in total for each carbon, and we are just right now bothered about the carbon-carbon bond. Other valencies will be fulfilled by the other elements, majorly by hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen, 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 hydrogen. So right now I'm not talking about the fulfilling the valency. I'm just telling you that carbon, 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 carbon can link with each other and can form the longer and longer and longer chains. Branch chains or something like this. That means carbon has linked with each other, and then made a vertical chain also. Then this way, I mean, you can see this looks like a very branched kind of structure. And cyclic rings are the ones where carbons have been linked with each other like this, or like this, where other valencies of the carbon will definitely will get fulfilled by some other element, mostly hydrogen. Okay, so these properties of an element to interact with each other, or to bind with its atom, not only in the straight chains but in the complex branch chains or in the ring kind of structure, is called as catenation. And this, due to this property, this element, that is carbon, has practically no limit to the number of structures it can form. It can form infinite amount of structures. So this is what I was telling you, that you have straight chain, branch chain, closed chain. Now let me just tell you one thing. If you imagine like this kind of structure is also possible. Okay. Now anything which you imagine, those compounds are possible and are organic compounds. So if you draw anything random also, if you draw, those compounds are also possible and would be existing in the organic compounds. So any random thing with linking carbon each other with a single bond, a double bond, a triple bond, and forming the long chains, even through your imagination, if you draw something that does exist, and you can prepare it in the laboratory through the synthesis, or if not naturally, you can prepare the organic compound through the artificial synthesis in the laboratory. So these are some important questions which teachers can ask you from the topic what we have discussed. Though we have discussed a very small topic where not much we have gone through in depth, but at least you know what exactly organic chemistry is, and from where did it get originated, and then what is the use of the carbonol, and these are the questions what can be asked, and this is how you have to answer. That is the reason I have just written it over here and quickly briefed about it, so that you don't get waved away just because I have told you the theory and I've not told you how to write an answer. Now you know what is the meaning of all these terminologies and how to write them. So this is about our first class. We will talk about rest of the questions in the next class. Till then, bye bye.